Hey, good Thursday afternoon to you. I'm meteorologist Brian McClure. It's August 20th. Not that that date really matters a whole lot, but between now and early October, statistically speaking, is the peak of the tropical season. Not that that's really, that big a deal, and not that that's it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, well, duh, every year it's kind of the same thing. But it's just kind of interesting that on this date, now all of a sudden we have two tropical systems. You can definitely tell it's getting busier. But we expected this. We've been talking about this for the past few days. So officially, when you look at the two systems out there right now, you've got Tropical Depression 13 and 14. This one right down here is 14 in the Caribbean. This one right out here is 13. That's the one that technically developed last night and organized. They both are headed in a westward motion right now. 13 is the one that I think has more potential to cause issues, potentially. 14 has a lot of headwinds that it has to go through. It has a lot of things that it has to go around, through, under, if it's going to cause problems. It could, but it'll be interesting to watch that one. Whereas 13, I think if it can stay away from land, it actually has the better chance of organizing and intensifying. Neither one, quite honestly, is what I would call really impressive right now. Here you go. Here's the very broad circulation with 14. 13, on the other hand, it's finally gotten a tighter circulation, but it's not what I would call a strong tropical system. That's one of the reasons why, it's, again, no-brainer. It hasn't been declared a strong storm yet. The strongest winds are over here on the eastern side, and even those are 30, 35 mile per hour winds. All right, so with all that in mind, what's going on? Okay, well, it's kind of interesting right now, the pattern across the eastern United States. You've got a big dip in the jet stream right here. Really, really big dip. For this time of year, that's really impressive. It's more like a September to early October pattern, where the jet stream dipped so far to the south, it brought cooler, drier air into the eastern U.S. And now what it's doing is it's pulling tropical moisture up from the Caribbean and from the southern Gulf and right towards Florida and Georgia and Alabama. And so that's what's happening here locally. One of the reasons why I'm saying that I'm not sure 14 down here is going to have a great chance of developing is because not only does it have to interact with Honduras, Belize, and Mexico, but if it can make it past all that and try and drift north, which is the general thinking it will probably try to do, it has to go through a lot of wind shear that's right up in this area over the Gulf. So we'll see. On the other hand, you've got 13 out here, and it's kind of in a perfect position to a certain extent. It's right out here over the open, warm waters. It's the peak of the season. This is the time of year if you're going to get big hurricanes to develop. These are the areas we start to watch, the main developmental region. However, there's actually still, believe it or not, a lot of dry air, the Saharan dust layer kind of coming out like that. You can even kind of make out the light gray color right there around the northeastern, northwestern periphery of it. So a little bit of dry air. I don't think it's going to keep it from developing. I'm just kind of noticing that. The other thing I'm noticing right now, again, same thing. I don't think it's going to keep it from developing, but I'm noticing a little bit of wind shear right in here. And I'll mention more of that coming up here in just a bit in some graphics that I'm going to show you. But the exact path of 13 is going to be interesting. When you look at the GFS and the Euro ensembles, they're actually not that much different. The Euro ensembles, and really for that matter, the Euro model in general, is not really big on this particular storm. Tropical Depression number 13. It keeps kind of poo-pooing it. It keeps saying, yeah, it's not really going to do much. I know a lot of people are really big on the European model, and I get why. For many years, it's been really stable, but I'll be honest with you, this season, it hasn't done that well. So I'm not sure it's really picking up on everything out there. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of the European models that don't even develop it at all. So technically, it's already initializing wrong because it has developed. So I'm not really keen on that. I'll be honest with you, though. I kind of hope the Euro is right, even though I don't think it is, because if it's right, we really won't be talking about a whole lot over the next 5 or 6 days. I think, on the other hand, the GFS has had a great handle on things this summer, and it has a pretty good handle on this storm and basically says it's going to be moving west-northwestward. All right, with that in mind, and by the way, let me go back to that graphic. With that in mind, it's very obvious that, yeah, see right there, Florida has to pay close attention, but really anywhere in the southeast has to pay close attention. Again, we're still pretty far out, so a lot of things could happen. It could churn, it could change. Let me show you what's happening right now. First, I'm going to circle where Depression 13 is. There it is, right about in there. Okay. These are the upper level winds, and you can see they're kind of racing. Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this instead. Let me kick it out here. There we go. That's much better. Yeah, I like that. Okay. These are the upper level winds coming across Florida like this, and then you can see them coming out here, and they're doing like that, and then they're kind of going like that. Okay, that's the upper level winds. Tropical systems do not like going against strong upper level winds. It's what we call it's what we call wind shear. Okay, so you've got the surface low down in here, and it's trying to move against that upper level wind. So for the next couple of days, don't be surprised if really you don't see a whole lot of change with this depression. I do think it'll become a storm, don't get me wrong. But even when it becomes a minimal tropical storm, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think you're going to see a lot of fluctuation in the next couple of days beyond that. I think it'll become a tropical storm, which by the way would be called Laura if it's the first one to get the L name. And then it's just going to probably stay there. So it's Laura or Marco, depending on which one of these develops. All right, so you've got some wind shear there. It's interesting. Let me show you another graphic. This is wind shear 2. This one actually probably does a better job of illustrating this. So again, there's the little storm right down in there, the little depression. You've got really, really strong winds here, 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 and here. Okay, so if you were to pick a perfect path for this storm to go at this moment in time, you would basically pick this path, right like that. Okay, the storm can't do that. So instead, what it's probably going to do is it's going to continue to move almost on a due west-northwest path like this. With that in mind, it's probably going to encounter a little bit of wind shear the next couple of days. Then it's probably going to get out of it and have a really good window of opportunity to strengthen. Then it's probably going to get back into a little bit of wind shear, maybe in this area, and then get back out of it, because by the time it gets to Florida, this is going to be gone. So I bring all that up because you can look at where the wind shear is now, but it's really hard to predict it 5 days down the road. So that's just a window, a capture in time. Okay, it's not a prediction of 4 days down the road. So you can look at tendencies, you can look at shear tendencies, things like that, and there is a lot of wind shear out there. But I think for the next 4 days, 3 days, something like that, I don't think this storm is in what I would call a really horrible area to develop. I think it will gradually develop. I think the next couple of days it's going to go through some wind shear, and so it won't, bomb out. But I think after that, it's actually going to be in an area where it could strengthen. This is a graphic. Here, let me pop this one out here full screen for you. This shows mid-level wind shear, and you can kind of see some winds pushing against it right here, and also some winds coming in right here. And again, here are the strong winds coming across Florida. So again, there's some interesting things going on here. The surface winds and the upper level winds are definitely a dilemma right now for keeping it from really, really intensifying. But the other thing I want you to notice is there's something called speed shear that could be a little bit of a problem. This might also be why a lot of our computer model guidance is not real keen on intensifying the storm too much. A lot of our guidance does show it as a tropical storm. Some of it as a category 1, but not a lot. And I think the reason why it might be doing that is what I want to show you here is this is a big high pressure dome right in here, okay? And so what it's doing is it's going to be exerting winds like this. So as the storm kind of comes dribbling through here like this, again, it's going to undergo some upper level wind shear, but it might also exert some speed shear on it. And what I mean by that is there might be some winds that are like this from the northeast, and then the surface winds are like this from the southeast. Well, tropical storms can survive that with no problem, but they don't exactly love it. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I can understand why a lot of our guidance is basically saying, hey, it's going to be a tropical storm, but then it's probably just going to stay steady state for a while. All right, let's get beyond that now, because I know what everybody wants to know. You want to know 4 and 5 days down the road. And as a meteorologist, I'm hesitant to ever show too much way down the road, because let's face it, we don't know too much down the road. It is a proven fact that beyond 3 or 4 days, tropical forecasting gets very, very tedious and very difficult. But I'm going to show it to you anyways, because I want you to, I'm not going to hold back from you. I'm not going to hide it from you. I might as well show you what the general thinking is. All right, so this is a wind graphic plot. Let me change my little crayon color here to darker color. All right, so there you go. There are the strongest winds. Again, still on the eastern side and northeastern side and kind of northern side. So you notice how it's still not kind of getting its act together, because if it was, then you'd see strong winds wrapping all the way around the center. Okay, so that's tomorrow. And then let's go further out in time. And it does get stronger. Again, I'm not saying it won't be a tropical storm. It will be. Within the next 24 to 48 hours, it's going to be a tropical storm. But what I'm saying is, it's still not wrapping these strong winds all the way around the center. It's mostly just here on the northern side. So that's what I mean when I say I think it's going to be going through some wind shear, and that's why it doesn't really fully get its act together and bomb out as a big storm or going toward the hurricane. Let's take this forward in time. I think there are two things going wrong, or not going wrong, that's not the right way to put it, that the computer guidance is having a hard time with. Number one, the speed shear, the high pressure pushing down on it, the wind shear, and some dry air, all is kind of giving the guidance an idea of, well, I don't know if it can get its act together. I think it can once it gets past about St. Martin and Puerto Rico. And here's why. If, this is a big if, but if it can stay away from this chain of islands and stay out further to the north out here, the water temperatures are warm enough, and the wind shear would not be what I would call too inhibiting of a factor. Will there be a little bit of speed shear? Yeah, there will be. There's still a lot of exertion from the east right here, and the surface winds from the southeast. So it's not a perfect setup, but it's not what I would call inhibiting. So I guess what I'm getting at here is I think the reason why a lot of our tropical guidance is saying, hey, this might be a tropical storm, or maybe at best a category 1, is because they are having a hard time discerning whether or not it interacts with Puerto Rico. Probably does a little bit, even if they don't feel it at the surface. What I mean by that is interaction like in the mid-levels and upper levels of the atmosphere. When a tropical system is spinning, it goes through the depth of the atmosphere. And so it's going to be interacting with mountains. And then guess what? There's mountains in Dominican Republic, there's mountains in Haiti, there's mountains in Cuba. So as a meteorologist, if I'm hoping for this not to become strong, you want this storm to hug the farther southern path. You basically want it to go right along near the islands. Because if it does that, it probably will stay weaker and won't have a chance to really get strong. If it goes farther to the north like this, and it doesn't have to be that far, I mean just a little bit farther north, more like this towards Grand Turk, I think it could strengthen. Absolutely. I think the ingredients are there. And so now you see why I think a lot of the guidance is struggling with this, because what's been happening, and I'll be honest with you, again, the Euro has not been good. The GFS has been better, but it hasn't been perfect. Here's what the GFS has been doing. On one model run, it will flip-flop and it will say, it's going to do this, and it will be stronger because it's going to go farther north, but therefore it's going to go more towards eastern Florida. And then the next model, just a few hours later, it'll come in and go, it's going to go farther south, and because of that, it's going to go over these islands and just being ripped apart, and then just be a weak thing coming into the Gulf. Well, those are two totally different things, and how do you portray that to the public when those are polar opposites? So, that being said, there's a reason why the forecast is exactly where it is. It basically splits the difference. It takes the storm just barely north of the islands, not too far north, not too far south, just like that. Okay? I'm not saying it will be exactly spot on, but let's go back to the forecast track. And this is not a coincidence that look at where the forecast track is. I'm not saying it's going to be right. I'm not going to say it's going to be dead on. To tell you the truth, it's probably going to wobble. I wouldn't even be surprised if it does more like this, and kind of wobbles around, because tropical storms typically do wobble. But I think that's a good idea of what's probably going to happen. What I mean by that is it's probably not going to go too far north, and it's probably not going to go too far south. Tropical systems inherently want to stay out over open, warm waters. So it probably won't just go down to the south and kill itself on the islands. I just don't see that happening. I don't think this high pressure to the north of it is strong enough to exert that much pressure to just kill it down in the islands. But I do think it's strong enough to exert enough pressure to keep it going more on a westerly path. So I think, believe it or not, I actually am in favor of this forecast right now. And then you'll notice that towards the tail end, right there, coming towards Florida, there is a forecast for intensification. It actually does make sense. Let's go back to this graphic. All right, let me show you wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Okay. Let's go back in time to right about now. All right, here is strong wind shear in the Gulf and over Florida due to that jet stream I was talking about dipping down into the Gulf. Here is very strong wind shear going just to the north of TD14. And then here is strong wind shear right there on the corner of your screen right before this storm is coming towards it. Okay? So again, in a perfect world, if it wanted to really bomb out and strengthen a lot, it would basically do like this. Well, it's not going to. It's gonna go more in a straight line. So let's go forward in time. Let's go to tomorrow at this time. And you'll notice still strong wind shear right here over Florida and the Gulf. Still strong wind shear here over Cuba. Strong wind shear Central Caribbean. And strong wind shear right here. Again, that's why I don't think it'll strengthen too much in the next 24 hours. Let's go to Saturday. All right. Now, still strong wind shear Florida and Gulf. Still strong wind shear Caribbean. Almost like fences, right? But it's finally starting to pull away from this wind shear. See what I'm saying? So go a little bit further out in time. Go to Sunday. And what starts to happen is it's almost like it outraces. It'll end up somewhere in here. It starts to outrace this wind shear. And if it can do that, this Sunday to Monday time period, look where it gets. It gets away from this wind shear, and this wind shear. It basically ends up in a nice little cocoon, perfect area. That is why the predicted intensification. So then it's just a matter of, does it then pull a little bit farther north, or does it stay a little bit farther south, or does it split the difference and go right across southern Florida and just keep going? And then, by the way, down the road, the monkey wrench in all this is the upper level patterns start to slow down, and it looks like the storm could actually kind of just dribble around in the Gulf next week. So that will be something to be watched too. So as you can see, there's a whole lot going on here, and every time I do one of these videos, the main thing I want to stress is, yeah, we're going to continue to get a lot of data, and things are going to, appear as though they're changing really fast, but the reality is there's not going to be big changes with this one in the short term. The next couple of days, I think you're just going to see a steady state, and then it's going to be down the road, late weekend to early next week, when we really get a good handle on, okay, has it stayed away from the islands, and where is it going? And by the way, on baynews9.com, this site has lots and lots of good data and good information. You can see the tracks, the spaghetti plots. I wanted to show you here are the water temperatures. They're not excessively warm, but yeah, they are running a little bit above average out here. But remember, they're warm every year this time of year. Again, we're at the peak of the season. They're supposed to be. Here's the Saharan dust. Again, kind of surrounding the storm right now. So that's going to help us a little bit keep the storm in check in the short term. I don't think it's going to inhibit it in the long term, though. Here is a good graphic that shows where it could strengthen a lot at this current day and time. And you'll notice the favorable versus the unfavorable areas. And then this is a good graphic. This is where there's heat potential in the water. And the most heat potential right now, it's not a surprise, it's in the Caribbean. And look where. Right there where the Gulf Stream goes past southern Florida. That's not a surprise. It's like that every year. But the reason I bring that up is because if this storm goes like this, the water is conducive, sure, for strengthening, but it's much more conducive for strengthening right there in the passage between Cuba and Florida And so that'll have to be watched, because I wouldn't be surprised if the storm doesn't really change a whole lot the next few days, and then all of a sudden it gets into that perfect area, and then maybe it could intensify there. All right, already gone too long today. I try to keep these shorter, but obviously I didn't keep this one short today. So thanks for watching. Again, it's August 20th, Thursday afternoon. Have a great rest of the day. Maybe I'll update tomorrow.